Hello, everybody, and welcome to the TEACHERCAST Educational Network. My name is Jeff Bradbury. Thank you so much for joining us today and making TEACHERCAST your home for professional development. Today is actually the second part of a two-part episode with the 95% group. With me, as always, is Laura Stewart, the Chief Academic Officer. Laura, how are you today? Welcome back to TEACHERCAST.
Well, thanks, Jeffrey. It's great to see you again, and I am so excited for this part two with our friend Robert Palazzo. I just can't wait for people to hear more.
You know, you're very knowledgeable about the science of reading. How did you yourself learn about the science of reading?
So I think, when I came on board, we were, and still are in school improvement efforts and started to really dig in on, well, what's the reason our students are struggling? And when we think about the other subjects students must master, math, science, social studies, the common thread in all that is reading and reading accurately. While we think, there's the computational side of math, which could be a whole nother discussion, the way we assess mathematics in our country currently isn't just straight computation. It includes strategies that are within, the reading rope and requiring students to apply decoding strategies and comprehending and then doing the computation. So I really saw the emphasis on increasing student accuracy with text as being the primary focus. And, over this, what I think might be a 4-year effort at this point or so, this past year, we saw that 80% of our third graders left third grade at the end of last year, meeting the Dibbles benchmark for oral reading fluency accuracy. So, that's what you want to see. You want to see kids leaving third grade reading grade level passages accurately, because we know that the research shows that if students are not accurate readers by the third grade, the likelihood of them becoming so decreases every year. So there is such a sense of urgency to make sure that our students are reaching that target in third grade before they move on to what people often coin as reading to learn rather than learning to read.
Yeah, and I appreciate, first of all, congratulations on that increase in the percentage of students who are leaving with that level of proficiency and accuracy. And you're right, that's kind of our first call to action. We want them to be able to read the words accurately. And from that, that of course leads to automaticity, which is of course the, kind of the segue into fluency. And when we're fluent readers, we can devote that cognitive energy to meaning and really making meaning from text. And as you mentioned, in those intermediate grades, math and content areas, we really need to be fluent and reading at grade level to be able to get meaning from those texts. So thank you for that. So what made you decide, was there kind of just a aha moment that you decided to take a risk and change course away from balanced literacy to structured literacy?
Well, I think what I started looking at is the financial commitment and the staffing commitment we were making to different reading initiatives in the district and not seeing the needle move at all in a positive direction. We were working with a company that was underwriting the cost of a different program to increase student reading. The emphasis of this program was basically reading logs. The more students read, the more they'll become proficient readers. And we found that a lot of the funds this company were putting into this program weren't leading to results. So as I had conversations with my partner at this company, they became really interested in the science of reading as I shared more about it. And also, not only that, but also what are some other reasons our students aren't responding to the resources we're using? And we talked about different barriers family faces, challenges they face. So we were able to reallocate those funds, which, were over $100,000 to support science of reading and also bring in a school social worker as part of the community school model instead of where those funds were being allocated to. So, because I was in this position where the district just spent quite a bit of money on resources, that to go now and say, hey, we need these additional resources would have been difficult. We don't want to burden our taxpayers. So I was able to secure alternative funding, and it's something I do quite often is look for folks out there that want to contribute to research-based efforts to support students, structured literacy, building a playground, renovating a faculty room, all different things I've done with my staff to, make the lives of our students and teachers better. So I think as I was digesting the research, it just made sense. The pieces fell into place, and the conversations I was having with that partner company all just really made sense. And myself and my reading specialist started to do research. Hey, what is out there that's going to focus specifically on phonics? Because teachers were, we need to teach them to read like the old days, like you. So then we came across the core curriculum, the phonics core curriculum. We're like, it looks pretty much like teaching in the old days to a certain extent. You newer components, technology, and we brought it to them, and they ran with it, and they said, yes, this is what we need.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you for that. And one thing you had said earlier that I meant to capitalize on, and I'll do it now, and that is you talked about all tiers of instruction. And I think it's really critical when you think about supporting students across all tiers of instruction that there is alignment across those tiers. And one of the things that we are really committed to at 95% Group is having an aligned ecosystem so that students across tiers are getting additive, not replacement instruction. Because our students who require Tiers 2 and Tiers 3 instruction really need more time, they need more intensity, they need more focus, and I think that's a really critical point to make in terms of serving the needs of all of our kids. The other thing you said that I love, and I'm sure your community loves this, is that you're really conscious about what is the return on our investment. We invest a lot of money in resources, and are we getting the return on that investment? So I'm sure your community is really pleased to hear about that. So what do you think are some misconceptions around the science of reading that educators might have?
I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that students aren't given the ability to read books. And it sounds ridiculous, but there's this misconception that students are only spending all day either reading nonsense words or focusing on particular phonics patterns, and that's not true at all. Of course, all of our classrooms have classroom libraries. We encourage free choice and selection of books. I would say, if anything, it's less restrictive now than it was with balanced literacy because students were told, you can't have that book. That's not at your level. So teaching students in independent reading, we're letting them select books that are of interest to them, and then we're supporting them in reading those books. Now they know, okay, well, I'm going to go ask how do I sound out this word? Or, so they're going to look more into that. So I think that's one of the bigger misconceptions of the science of reading. Another misconception is, I think, that students spend too much time in the phonics realm, of course, but, it goes by age appropriateness. We're not, fourth, fifth graders spend as much time as first graders because with a developmental scope and sequence and a consistent scope and sequence, like you mentioned earlier, across all three tiers, the percentage of time that students need to put mental effort into decoding words should decrease over time, and there should be an increase in their analysis of vocabulary and comprehension and things of that nature as they get older.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. So well said. I think those are some common misconceptions for sure. And things that, we want to make sure that our kids are getting those strong foundations so that they can fly as readers. And you have to lay that groundwork. And it's through instruction that we lay that groundwork. It's not through magical thinking. It's not through just having kids read aloud. Suddenly they'll intuit all there is to know about this system called the alphabetic code. So thank you for that. What advice would you give to other administrators who are hesitant about making an investment in something new, in transformation like you did?
I think if you have the data that dictates that change is needed, you need to be ready to make that change. You need to find those people that are going to be there with you and get their feedback. We know that the naysayers are the loudest. There are people often want to do things the way they've always been done. But if we haven't seen change over a period of time, we know change needs to be made. And I think one of the biggest changes I put in place was that due to limited staffing supports, because Panther Valley is one of the districts that is fighting for equitable funding from the state, where we don't have the number of paraprofessionals and reading specialists that other schools have. So for our tier two intervention, we went to a walk to intervention model. We actually did this across grade level intervention. So we had students in first grade working with students in third grade. They were going to different teachers, and it was all focused on mastery of skills. And our students loved that. They loved it. They loved the opportunity to work with other teachers. They loved the opportunity to feel like they were successful because the resources they were using were right where they should be. And it was just a 30-minute block. That's all it was. And, I think one of the things I often talk about is the kids as they're moving, picture 500 first through third graders, moving through the building. I asked a kid, "You need to walk." He said, "I can't walk. I'm so excited to learn to read." So, it was like one of those aha moments when the kid said that. I was like, did he really just say that? Because they get excited, and they feel successful. And who doesn't want to feel successful?
I love, first of all, that's a great story. I mean, was that one of those moments you're like, my job is done? Like the child is expressing exactly what we want the child to be able to feel. I was reading a book called Hidden Potential by Adam Grant. I don't know if you've seen that book, but it's very clear around the research around motivation is that the most motivating thing for all of us as humans is making progress at something. And making sure that our kids are successful is really important. And a walk to intervention model where kids are getting needs-based instruction, I believe, is one key to helping them out of what I call the cul-de-sac of intervention, right? Because they're getting that specific need met, that gap filled, they're getting assessed and moving on. And it's like we talked about at the beginning, the dynamism of it. It's a very dynamic process that you create when you create a walk to intervention model.
Yeah, and I think we've really changed things in terms of assessment because we're assessing every 20 days and we're restructuring not only our tier 2 groups but our tier 3 groups every 20 instructional days, where before you had your beginning of the year benchmark, you had your middle of the year, you had your end of the year. So maybe some schools were only changing supports 3 times a year, if that. And that, you have a kid who may be getting supports that no longer needed support months ago. So why, their needs will be better met within the classroom, working on some reinforcement of on-grade level material or even, above grade level material. So I think, no one has a qualm with when we think about children who play sports. When children play sports, whether it's football or basketball, how do you get better at a particular skill? It's repetition. And then once you master it, you move on. My daughters are in cheerleading for the first time, and I've seen this. I've seen that they will practice the cheers that the girls don't do as well with more times than those that they have mastered. We don't forget about what we've mastered, but we don't need to practice it as many times. And I think universally everyone would agree that sports players, for the most part, professional sports players, are there because they practiced and they got good at it. So I think when we look at the human brain and the understanding that just like those types of skills, reading is not much different at all, that we need to practice and we need to master skills and then move on to the next sequence of skills so we can play at a higher level, so to speak.
Well said. Well said. And I always try to remember just what you said. Reading is a learned skill. And like other learned skills, we have to take incremental steps of success, and that comes through instruction and practice to proficiency. So I think you're absolutely right about that. In our conversation today, I was just reflecting on. I mentioned this book earlier, this Courage to Lead book, and so many things that you've done as a courageous leader are reflected in this. For example, you decided to learn alongside your teachers. What is the science of reading? You took a bold move of saying we need resources that meet the needs of our kids, that meet the needs of instruction. You did a hard look at data. When we talk about sometimes the hardest conversation to have is why do we need to change? And one of the ways it sounds like you really were able to get buy-in is by taking a good, honest look at how our kids are doing and what can we do better. So thank you for the boldness that you've shown as a literacy leader and the example that you have set for other literacy leaders. Much appreciated. So I have one final question for you. What are you hopeful about? What are you hopeful about? What are you hopeful for?
I'm hopeful that our students will continue to succeed as we've given them the tools they need to succeed in reading accurately. Now they will move on, and those teachers that are so passionate about teaching their content areas, that they'll be ready to learn that material, and that it'll translate into them achieving what they want when they graduate high school, move on to college or the workforce, because reading is a right? We always say that, we see that often. It is a right. Every child has the right to learn to read. And when we provide that for them, it opens so many doors for them that wouldn't be there before.
That's right. That's right. And we want our children, we want to deliver on that promise so our children can flourish as literate citizens. And you're doing such great work. I'm just so honored to have had this conversation with you today and to thank you, express our collective gratitude as educators for the work you're doing as a leader. So thanks for joining us today. Jeffrey, I'm going to turn it back to you now.
Laura, you are amazing. Thank you so much for this great conversation and also for bringing this topic from the 95% group to TeacherCast. You're absolutely doing a fantastic job here. Thank you so much for today.
Oh, thank you, Jeffrey. It's just been an honor, like I said, to be in conversation with Robert.
And Robert, for anybody out there who's looking to get in touch with you, maybe to ask a few questions about how your school is working out this year, how do they do that?
Sure. So on X, it's Palazzo, PVES, or they can email me. It's my last name, palazzor@panthervalley.org.
And we're going to make sure that we have the links to this and all of our shows over at teachercast.net/95% group. Again, that's teachercast.net/95% group with the word percent all spelled out. Laura, one more time, thank you so much for joining us. And Robert, good luck with everything. Please feel free to invite yourself back on the show. Would love to have you guys on in a future episode. And that wraps up this episode of the TeacherCast Educational Network. On behalf of Robert and Laura and everybody here on TeacherCast, my name is Jeff Bradbury, reminding you guys to keep up the great work in your classrooms and continue sharing your passions with your students.